Welcome to a review of the Ijk Force No. 2 night camera. I have one right here. I'm going to have to call this video the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's some of each. The question becomes, in any kind of review, is not, is it a good or bad product? Is it worth the money spent for the product? That is to say, I spent $400. Did I get a $400 product? Or did I get a piece of junk? Or is it outstanding, incredible? I mean, that's the evaluation. That's the whole purpose of a review, is to try and give you, the observer, the listener, the information to where you can have a quality piece of information to decide for yourself if something like this is worth $400 to you in your application. On with the information. This is actually the second camera that I got. The first one, we had some issues. The immediate, obvious issue was with batteries. I will explain more what happened as best I can tell, and the company response and the outcome of it all concerning those batteries later on. Suffice it to say that customer service did take care of me. I'll just start right off by saying that. Customer service did take care of me. Okay, very general specifications, and I will try and put a copy of their website specifications and information in the comments below this video. But very generally speaking, this camera has 4 functions when you're going through use. It's capable of taking pictures. Those pictures are JPEG pictures, 1280 by 960 JPEG resolution. And it's capable of taking AVI pictures, the videos. And again, it's used the same resolution, 1280 by 960, 30 frames a second, so it's actually pretty good in that count. It also, you can look at the videos that you've taken with this camera, within the camera. So there's a review mode and there's a menu mode. I could spend an hour, easy, 2-3 hours, explaining all the functions going on in this camera. So all I'm going to hit is the high points. It uses 2 18650 batteries. They're lithium-ion batteries. If you're familiar with lithium-ion, there's some question marks there, which we'll get into. The main aperture of this thing is a 30mm lens. They say 31. I measure it with my micrometer. I measured 30. Okay, 30, 31, whatever. The eyepiece, not the eyepiece, but the objective lens is covered with a lens cap with a 9mm hole and a UV filter in it. So if you're in daytime mode, you would operate like that. If you start getting to dusk or twilight, you can pop that down, and now 90% more light gets into the camera to be imaged. So like I say, blocks just over 90% of the light getting in. But it's a night camera. It's not really intended so much for day use, but it's usable. The display in it is an LED display. It's 0 to 15 settings. 0 is pretty dim, but that's good. If you're in the night setting and it's a dim display that you're looking at as you're operating the camera, you take the camera down and you're not night blind. You can actually see still. 15 is pretty bright. Anything other than direct sunlight falling on the view screen, I had no problem looking at it at all. So I thought the selection of brightness was really pretty good. The infrared illuminator is an 850 nanometer 5-watt illuminator unit. It actually has 8 settings. If you want to count off, it's one of those settings, which I guess technically it is. But 0 through 5 would be running on the internal batteries. If you want settings 6 and 7, you have to power this camera through the USB port, which is underneath this little rubber cover. California, yes I am, okay. It's underneath this little rubber cover. We'll go more into that in a little bit later detail. But camera illuminator 6 and 7 are maximum power, and I guess they decided that by using that bright of a setting at 6 and 7 would be decreasing your battery runtime too much, so it's like, let's limit it at 5, which not unreasonable. You got to make some compromises. It's a handheld portable unit. Memory card. They say it will handle anything from a 4 to 128 gigabyte card. They supply a 32 gigabyte card with it. I've had no issues with the card. I will say, and this is one of my knocks, getting that card out is, I'm sorry, my fingers aren't that tiny. Almost need tweezers to get the thing out. It's awkward. It's difficult. So I use the USB cable to get data out of the camera. But more on that later. They claim a 10-hour runtime if you have the illuminator turned off. So like, okay, that's pretty impressive. So we'll talk about how it does as far as runtime goes. As I mentioned before, the resolution of this camera is 1280 by 960 for JPEG. And I took a picture of my dog at about 6 feet, daytime. As you can see in the picture, it's really pretty good image. In AVI mode, I took another video of the same dog out in the backyard. I actually had the IR setting on 3, so it is a IR based picture, so it's black and white. It does 1280 by 960 AVI, 30 frames a second. And as you can see, it actually did a pretty fair job of keeping, yeah, that's puppy dog down there. That's him. It actually did a pretty fair job of keeping him in focus. And as far as his activity goes, it wasn't really blurred or anything. So it did a pretty good job of taking an AVI picture. Okay, the big point of a night camera is, what can I see? Is it a blurry image? Is it a crappy image? Is it really just, I'm doing good to see 20 feet? Well, they claim 300 meter range for being able to see with the illuminator. That corresponds to 328 yards, by the way. Well, of course, I'm going to test that. I went out on one of our local dirt roads where it was moderately dark. I suspect that the AGC was actually affecting a little bit as far as the camera's capability of image distance for the illuminator. But here's a video of looking down this one dirt road nearby.
This is IR7. No IR. IR1. IR2. IR3. IR4. IR5. I don't know what we got down the road down there, but eyes looking at us. There's 6. There's 7.
As I said, looking down that dirt road, I suspected it was not really imaging everything that the camera is capable of. So I also went out to Hardware Ranch, which is a wildlife refuge area. I'm in northern Utah, and it's serious dark there. Well, there was a herd of elk about 250, 350 yards out, and some of them are further, some are a little closer, but that's a good round number. And by the way, I did check the range with this, with my rangefinder, and I was able to confirm the distances. The bush that you're going to see in the lower left-hand corner of the image is about 90 yards out or so. So you kind of get to see how that responds as I go through the different infrared illuminator settings. And I did have it hooked up to USB power, so I went through all 7 settings.
That's IR7, by the way. Back to none. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
As you can see in the video, you can actually see those elk out there at 350 yards. I thought that was pretty impressive for this little unit. Like I said, that is with the self-supplied, self-contained infrared illuminator, but it is using a USB supply so that I could use settings 6 and 7 for the illuminator. Well, anytime you start running a battery-operated unit out in the middle of nowhere, runtime becomes a big issue. Remember I said that they claimed that it would run for 10 hours with no IR illuminator? Like, right. That I gotta see. Well, I didn't test 10 hours. What I did is I went through and measured the current drain. I took one of the battery caps off and I measured current through the battery system. I measured current drain and then plotted a chart, which I'll now put up on the screen. And this chart, as you can see, it goes from a little over 100 milliamps to a little bit over a half amp. The higher the current, obviously the shorter runtime that you're going to have with the batteries supplying power for the unit. Even with the maximum brightness on the display and the maximum setting for the IR, which is 5 because it's on battery, I was still able to consistently get more than 2 hours runtime. Well, I thought that was pretty good. Considering how much current that thing is drawing, 2 hours runtime, that's not shabby. If I recall correctly, I was getting about 2 hours and 4 minutes to 2 hours, 12 minutes. I ran it a number of times. Well, let's talk about the batteries a little bit more here. Specifically the battery meter. That's one of the things I didn't really like, to be honest. You get this little indicator down in the bottom corner of your screen and it says, okay, you're full charge. Okay, great, fantastic. About 2 minutes later, it says you're 2/3 charge. Well, that's quick for the first third. But then it stays at 2/3 for almost the entirety of the runtime. When it goes to 1/3 charge, every time that I ran it, between the time that it said it was 1/3 charge to the camera shut off due to low voltage, was only a matter of 3 to 8 minutes. Like, okay, so I spent nearly 2 hours with it showing 2/3 battery charge. In other words, it really doesn't say it's half charge or I'm getting lower. Okay. But it did at least tell me you're fixing to die, so time to change batteries. I understand it. There's compromises with any engineering project, any high-tech device. It's just my personal opinion. I didn't really like the way the battery meter behaved. But it did its job. It said, okay, I got full battery. I'm fixing to die. Okay, so be it. One of the things which I noted on this camera, I would be focusing on an object, say 30 feet out. As I turned the focuser in one direction to achieve focal point, so I get the best image, I note where I've turned that to. I go beyond that and I come back, now it's a different point. So clockwise and counterclockwise rotation of the focusing ring apparently do not keep the lens at exactly the same settings. Well, that's disturbing. I've done a lot of work with cameras and things. Of course, a lot of the camera lenses I used were 2, 3, 4 times the cost of this whole unit. So I figured it's a lower dollar lens. Okay, it apparently has some mechanical slack in the focusing part of it. In other words, it does not absolutely control the in and out of the main part of the lens as precisely as some camera lenses. Be aware of that. Can you get a good focus? Yeah, you can. It is plenty good. As you saw with the dog picture before, you can get a good sharp image. But it's something that just you got to deal with. While I'm talking about focus, not a knock on this, but it's a knock on physics. If you're taking a picture or a video, and let's say you are in a ambient light situation, you get mostly daylight, but it's getting dark, so you turn the infrared on. Well, I got news for you. Visible light and infrared light focus differently. If you look at good camera lenses, you'll see an IR mark and a visible light mark. They're not the same. So when you focus on something that's in the infrared range and you're getting some visual light component, they're not going to focus the same way. You're going to have a soft image. Better to go all visible or all infrared. Go one way or the other. You can get a good sharp image either way, but you combine the two and it's a fuzzy image. But this thing can't deal with that. Physics can't deal with that. While I'm thinking of some of the things that were kind of, in my mind, a little bit questionable, one of the things I noticed was these battery caps. If you notice, they are close. What happens if I accidentally take my ring across those battery caps? There's a voltage potential between them. Well, am I going to get a short? Am I going to have, if I accidentally let a key go across that, have I got a problem? Well, I guess they did a little thinking about that. It appears that there's a coating on these caps, so a direct short is not something which, in its pristine condition, that I see as an issue. I was concerned, and 5 years down the road, with these things getting dinged up a little bit, I might be concerned about, I want to make sure I don't accidentally create a short across them. But as they are, it's not really a problem. But it is kind of a nuisance, as close as these things are, it's kind of a nuisance to screw and unscrew the caps. I mean, it's just, they're so close that it's kind of a pain, but where else are you going to put the things? I don't know, maybe you could stack both batteries on top of each other. I don't know if there were any other viable options, but okay. Compromise. Okay, I got no real issue with that. It's just kind of an inconvenience. There is one thing I did notice, though, with these 18650 batteries. I got to keep the numbers straight. If you put one in backwards, I don't think there's any protection against that. So when you put batteries in this thing, double check yourself. Make sure that you're putting them in correctly. The battery caps are marked plus for the top, so you want to be sure that you put the battery in plus on top. I don't know what's going to happen if you put one in backwards. I don't want to find out. I point that out just as a caution. Again, that's not really a knock on the camera. I don't see any of these 18650 batteries being reverse protected in any regard. So it's not this thing's problem. Memory card, well, pull that little rubber cover out. And you can see the memory card in that slot. It's not very big, and it's kind of recessed down in that little well, so it's hard to reach. You know, as I commented before, if I try and pop that card out, it's almost impossible for me to get it out. Almost need tweezers. But, well, again, mechanical compromise, I suppose. The middle slot you see there is where the USB hooks up. And the little round circle that you see is where the TV interface hooks up. As you can see, The rubber cap actually does a pretty good job of sealing. They tell me this camera is resistant against things like any condensation or dew or light rain. It's obviously not submersible, but they claim, and I got to believe their claim at this point, it's not a problem if you get sprinkled on or something, or you're out trying to take video and it rains on you. I guess I'm more susceptible to the problem with the rain than the camera is. When I hook up the data transfer cable, like I say, I don't like taking the card in and out. First off, it's a little card, it'd be easy to lose. Not the fault of the camera, it's my fault. So I use the data transfer cable. It only goes about 7.5 to 8 megabits per second, so it's not a real fast data rate. So if you're taking a large video file, 10, 12, 15 minutes, it's going to take a while to transfer. You might want to find the tweezer, take the card out, put it in the computer and go. Having said that, mentioning the long video file, the camera did fine creating the file. It did its job. It did what it's designed to do. However, and I took it and tried to interface it with my computer. The computer said, I can't view this AVI. The program does do AVIs that I was using. The problem is the file was big enough that the computer choked. Okay, not the camera's fault, it's the computer's fault. The camera did its job, created the file, did well, closed the file, everything was fine with the camera. The computer got upset. So if you're going to be doing a lot of videos, tying it back to the computer, you might want to consider only running 3 or 4 minute long videos. Then the file is small enough that the computer can deal with it. Personally, I have a program that will take even a 10, 12, 15 minute video, even though it's gigabytes in size, it's not a problem. So for me, it wasn't really an issue, but I point that out to people with their Windows 10 computer or whatever computer they're using. Some are going to have a problem with the file size, but again, that's not the camera's fault. You told it to take a 15-minute picture and it did. The TV output cable, I've had some issues with. I have hooked it up to my television and it did function as it says in the manual that it will. Okay, got no problem with that. The problem I had is as you plug and unplug, it caused some kind of a voltage potential between the two. I don't know exactly what. But then the display had the bottom half of it was brighter than the top half. It faded over time. I don't know. They tell me that they couldn't duplicate it. I don't know. I'm not going to use that mode personally. But if you can make it work and it's not an issue to you, great. It does function as they claim. The manual supplied is, well, I've read a lot of tech manuals over the years, and this one was bad. I mean, it was bad. Environmental conditions, what you can use this camera in, from ultra cold to ultra hot. No clue what that really means. Well, now they have at least released specifications on their website, and they talk about the temperature range for operation. Okay, great. Like I said, the manual, it leaves a lot to be desired. The information is there for the most part. You're just plain going to have to read it 15 times and sit there and play it. This button does what? Manuals? Okay. The information's there, but it's not real conducive to understanding what's going on. I had to rate that thing as bad. I'm sorry. Now we come to the ugly. I mentioned before the problem with batteries. Well, the batteries supplied a couple of lithium-ion batteries. Well, what happened, and let me explain what happened. I don't know that it's reproducible. I don't know. But I'll go into that. What I did is I was in the process of trying to transfer a video from this to my computer. So I had the USB cable plugged in, and I'm happily sitting there playing away on the computer, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I finally got done what I was doing. I reached over, grabbed the camera, and actually it was, grabbed this side of the camera. It's like, grabbed the camera and oh, this thing's hot. Not warm, it's hot. I touched the metal battery caps, and they were hot enough to burn me. Not a bad burn, but it was like, I don't want to do that again. So I got the caps off, took the batteries out, and they got hot enough that, as you can see, it split the heat shrink on the batteries. And one of them had less than 7/10 of a volt across it after they cooled off, and the other had, I forget what it was, and I was like 2-point-something volts across it. Like, these batteries are toast. What happened? The lithium-ion batteries. Well, my immediate thought is, having lots of contact with lithium-ion over the years, is they were either overcharged, overdrained, or they'd been impacted some way, caused physical damage to the battery. Something happened to the battery. My immediate thought is, well, I had a USB cable plugged into the camera. It must have overcharged it. Well, the company tells me when I question them, no, the USB cable does not charge the batteries. There's no charge put on the batteries at all. I was able to verify that, by the way. So, what they're telling me is correct. Well, what caused the batteries to fail? In the conversation, to customer service credit, they immediately said, we have got some bad batteries out there. We no longer use that supplier for batteries. We have gone to a different source for batteries. Send us the camera. We want to make sure that it's working right. There's not a problem. We will gladly take care. We want to take care of you. We want you happy. Okay, I can deal with that. Like I say, I've dealt with high-tech products most of my life. You know, I'm not a spring chicken. I've been around a while. And things happen. Lithium batteries going bad. It could have got real ugly. If I'd have not caught the problem, it could have got even worse and burned the house down. Why those batteries chose that moment in time to go bad, I don't know. I don't understand. I'm not sure I know the whole picture. But the new camera, new batteries, everything's working. So I can't complain about that. I would suggest when you're using this camera, every once in a while, particularly if you're using it, extensively, check the battery caps. Make sure they're not hot. If they're hot, you better stop real quick and find out what's going on. For me, when I had that USB cable hooked up, that's when it occurred. Is there a connection? Frankly, I don't know. The company tells me no. It's just, that's when the batteries happen to give up the ghost. I can't prove or disprove that. But I will say that they were very quick to address my questions. I sent them the old camera back. They went through and tested it. They told me they didn't find anything wrong with it. But just to make sure, they sent me a new one. Okay, I can't complain. I have to give customer service an A+. The camera, because of some of the issues that I've pointed out and some other things, I have to give it an A. One of the other things which I noted, and I haven't really addressed before, is when I'm focusing the camera on an object. If I'm out here looking at the viewfinder, fine, no problem. I'm real critical on focus, so I want to get right up to it. Well, now the whole image in the view screen is blurry. Well, why is it blurry? Because I'm wearing glasses with bifocals. The bottom part of a bifocals is the only place I'm going to see close up clearly, which means I'm getting my head back and I'm playing this kind of game, and that's not going to work. I come up with a solution, a workaround. I use a little magnifying lens. Hold that up to the viewfinder, and now I can go focus I can get a good sharp image. Workaround. That's not really a knock on the camera. I mean, come on now. I wear glasses. They can't expect that to be covered, in how it's going to operate. Overall, as I said, I give customer service an A+. The cameras get an A. It's not a $5,000 piece of night gear. Like I said, you can't compare a Volkswagen and a Maserati. Comparison's not fair. Is it worth $400? If you're looking for a night camera, I would say it's well worth consideration. It does well. It does as it's claimed. They claim it'll work out to 300 meters. And as you saw in the video, you were able to see elk past 300 meters, out to about 450. So how can you complain? They say it does this. It did. Hopefully this review has been helpful. Hopefully you gained some information about this particular device. I find it personally fascinating. I could easily spend 2-3 hours going through all the details of it. It is a lot of information that I've tried to throw out there for you. Hopefully this has been helpful. And just a footnote, I get nothing from the company for doing this review. So they've not asked me to do anything. I have asked them for more details, more information. They seem willing to try and give me more information, but to date I've not gotten that additional info. But that on short notice, maybe not. Suffice it to say, it's a lot of fun. I've had fun with it. I look forward to using it extensively. It seems like a very capable piece of equipment. It's not a $5,000 night scope. Don't go into this expecting it to be that. It's not. But it is certainly worth $400, at least as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully this review has been helpful. Unfortunately, I have to say it is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And batteries with the ugly. The camera, pretty much, is the good.